What's going on, guys, and welcome back. The meta decks that have been dominating Snap for the last couple of months have finally been hit by the Nerf hammer, opening up the meta back for the taking. Now, I don't know if this is you, but if you're lost on what decks to play after all of the nerfs for the next couple of weeks of the season or their foreseeable future, today we have you covered as I talk about my favorite decks right now to be competitive in the ladder and what I think will do well in the new meta. Now, obviously, you're going to recognize some of the decks from the previous meta as they're not just going to disappear, but we have something for just about everybody. This is not going to be the meta deck report. That'll be in about a week or so. As you guys know, I don't like just to launch that out for the clicks. I like to make sure it's pretty solidly grounded, and it's going to take some time for the decks to rise and fall before we have a firm grasp at the new meta. And we're going to start today with the deck that I hold pretty much responsible for getting me a good chunk of the way to infinite, and that's going to be the Good Cards deck. Now, a lot of good cards did get nerfed. However, the deck is still just fine. If you do replace a couple of cards, it's going to be completely optimized to do well in the current ladder. Again, the name of the deck is Good Cards, so you can swap out other cards for some of your favorites. In this build, I did swap out Armor for Wave, but feel free to throw in Thor or Maximus or throw in Shuri, Titania. A lot of cards work here, and this deck is absolutely great for handling the majority of the decks out there. If you want a full deck breakdown with a turn-by-turn instructions, you can go ahead and check the top right corner or in the description. Now, our next deck is very similar to the last one as its core base is built around, well, just good value cards. We're going to have a great tempo here. We've got tech cards like Shang-Chi, White Queen for the intel, Devil Dinosaur, and Agent Coulson have a great surprise play on 6. You can go ahead and throw in the newly nerfed Arrow. She still works just as good here. Or if you do have access to Zabu, he is perfectly fit here with Agent Coulson, White Queen, and Shang-Chi as your 4-cost cards. And we've got Magneto as the finisher, who I believe is one of the best cards now in Snap. If you have not had the chance to play Zoo, the sequel, I recommend giving it a shot. It's definitely more of a competitive deck at the moment, especially with Killmonger exiting the meta just a bit now that Thanos has been nerfed, and we should see less of him altogether. You can throw in more big power units down below if you want a bigger shot for your Dracula, and you flood the board with this deck. It performs great. There's a lot of ways to play it, and there's plenty of replaceable options depending on your collection level. Now, I know they targeted Thanos Lockjaw for a nerf, but Jane Jaw is still doing perfectly fine, and there's so many ways to customize the deck. Here's a pretty good shell of a very solid competitive deck that right now, if you don't mind RNG, the deck can be pretty consistent with its high power and reliable draws. You just need to know when to retreat and when to go all in. With only about 1,000 games into the current season, it's rocking a 60% win rate at the moment, so hop on it while you can. Now, this is supposed to be the Pool 3 only decks, but MODOK was just last season, so I'm going to throw him in this bunch. MODOK discard. Very reliable right now for steady climbing, and it performs at a high level against even the more competitive decks on the ladder. If you do have access to MODOK, definitely recommend the build. Simply overwhelming the opponent with Swarm and having great value with Calling Wing, Wolverine, and Morbius. The deck has reliable power and consistent, dependable draws. Let's go ahead and take it up a notch and just look past Pool 3 and start looking at Pool 4 with Darkhawk and Valkyrie, who, in my opinion, are some of the better cards in the game now that they avoided the nerfs. Now, I've used these decks in tournaments to climb the ladder pretty well this season, and we've got to start with my favorite, and that is Sera Control. Now, I do have a full video breaking this down in efforts not to repeat myself, but guys, Sera Control has continued to be just a reliable deck and probably one of my favorites to play at the moment as people try to figure out the meta and the decks they are playing. You're equipped with everything you need to simply counter what the opponent is going to play. You have great curve, good tempo, and just an explosive turn 6. Arrow getting nerfed doesn't matter in this deck, as Sera is going to give you that discount to have her at a cheaper play. With Sera in the deck, you can play things like Shang-Chi and Darkhawk on the same turn. You can also just load the board with your cheap cost cards. Simply put, the deck is reliable. I've used it multiple times to climb continuously. Again, if you don't have Zabu, you can do the cheaper version of the build, and you can find that in the top right corner. Say hello to one of my favorite decks, my tournament deck, Rocks and Hawks. Now, little things have been adjusted, but I went 3-0 against Leech, took down Thanos easy. This deck simply slaps. You have so many things at your disposal. Playing Darkhawk early is usually advantageous. You can throw armor in the deck if you want to protect your Darkhawk. We have Devil Dinosaur and She-Hulk to play the big explosive turn 6 if you skip turn 5. We have White Queen for the intel, Rock Slide to power up the Darkhawk, and then, of course, Zabu that's going to benefit every single 4-cost card in the deck, in addition to Agent Coulson's card that he pulls as well. If you manage to get Quinjet down, that, yes, is still a fine card, and you have Zabu on the board, you're looking at super discounts for Agent Coulson's cards. I've been waiting for the tournament to wrap up, but I will be doing a full deck guide on the deck. Again, I think Darkhawk is just so ridiculous, and this deck uses and abuses his ability to the fullest. Just make sure you're well aware of the opponent's deck size and you just know how many cards that they do have so that you can appropriately calculate your Darkhawk. But let's move on to Sera Surfer, and it is back at a competitive level. Still a great win rate and even better post-nerfs that have happened. You have Goose to control the opponent. You have the Nova Killmonger combo. And then Sera just gives you an explosive in-game that a lot of decks cannot match anymore. Mr. Fantastic, Maximus, there's just so many good 3-cost cards. And now that the Space Stone has been nerfed, we can now appropriately play the Storm version of the deck that utilizes Juggernaut and Storm to close down locations early, Polaris to go and pull whatever was on the flooded location back to your main locations, and then you simply just beat them with the Silver Surfer and the Giant combos. Now, they tried their damnness to nerf Shuri, but guys, she's still the heavy hitter to knock off the throne. This deck is still very reliable and super consistent with the same game plan, right? You use Shuri to activate Captain Marvel, Red Skull, She-Hulk, and even the post-nerf Arrow. I also like to go and remove Arrow or Captain Marvel for something like Arnim Zola. For more game plans, now that Taskmaster has been adjusted slightly, you do have to be a bit more careful with your Taskmaster play, and be sure to protect your big cards with Cosmo or Armor if you don't plan on Arnim Zola. You have 1-cost cards that are super powerful, the Zero and Red Skull combo, the Zero Titania, Zero Lizard. Plenty of options in the deck. If you do have access to Shuri, I recommend using the deck until they probably end up nerfing her again. Now, to wrap up the pool 4 decks, we're going to move on to Valkyrie Control, and I stand by this being one of the most underrated decks and more underrated cards in Marvel Snap. With the other cards getting nerfed and Valkyrie avoiding one, she's definitely going to be perfect for this season of the meta. The main point of the deck is to be shutting down lanes early and using ongoing cards in combination with Valkyrie's ability to get the advantage. We have Thor and Jane Thor in the deck. Jane Thor is going to pull the 0-cost cards to play alongside Valkyrie. Cards like Mojo, Thor, and his hammer for cheap, easy power. However, with the same vein of the Sera Surfer deck, Storm is back, and I think it's going to be perfect for Valkyrie Control. Again, we're looking to shut down a lane early with Spider-Man, with Professor X, or Storm, and then we simply play Valkyrie on top of Angela, Mojo, Ant-Man. A lot of things work together in the deck, and I think it's going to shine this season. Now, let's take it up another level. For those that did buy Thanos or those that have pool 5 cards, we're going to talk about some of the more dominating decks even after the nerf. I can completely tell you that Thanos is still going to be pretty dominant. He's a great card, and all of those Infinity Stones still have several purposes that you can utilize. I've been playing him pretty much since he came out, and even before Lockjaw, he was a good card. So we're going to break down Thanos decks, and then, of course, we've got to talk Galactus. My friends, this is Galactus' world, and we are simply just living in it. I think Galactus decks are going to be extremely tough this season because, well, Arrow has been nerfed and we'll see less play overall, and that was one of the bigger counters. So long as you can learn when to play Galactus, when to snap, when to do the dance with priority so you can play Shang-Chi or just lay down a instant win null or death. Galactus is very straightforward and it's pretty simple to win as long as you understand the basics. Now, obviously, this is just one shell of Galactus. We have Nimrod, who has come out recently, and you can utilize the crazy Nimrod Galactus decks, and this one does perform as well at a very high level. Now, you can play things like Valkyrie followed by Rocket Raccoon if you don't draw Shang-Chi. And again, it's all about that priority dance once again, but you have backup options outside of Galactus with this deck. Now, also with Nimrod, a common practice with Galactus is a turn 6 deck, and I like playing something like this where you combine just toxic cards and a lot of negative power on the opponent's side. If they're not expecting it, it's at the last turn of the game, so they cannot react to it. And there are giveaways in this deck, but they're not as obvious as other Galactus decks because you're not exactly playing a ramp card. Alright, yes, he has been nerfed, and yes, they did address a lot of things to target Thanos specifically, but guys, obviously, he still slaps. We're going to be looking at a few Thanos decks today, but we start with the ongoing version that does not use Lockjaw, and we have replaced Quinjet with Luke Cage. Now, Luke Cage is going to synergize both with Lizard and Valkyrie. She will not be able to reduce things like your Thanos, Spectrum, and Lizard below their original power. We have Devil, Dinosaur, Blue Marvel, Khazar, everything that just helps Valkyrie reset the opponent's side and keep yours afloat or at a higher value. And all these ongoing cards are also going to benefit with our other win condition in Spectrum. Now we end on Thanos Death, or Infinity Death as I used to call it, and this is a Destroy Thanos build. We're going to be looking at Lockjaw again to be filtering our stones to try to get these high-powered cards to pop out, or we can look at the other win condition by playing our stones down, using Killmonger to destroy the opponent's side. One-cost cards are everywhere right now, so you can get some easy power, and destroy your own stones to play things like Null. You get tons of value out of Wave when you play Doctor Doom. You can Odin the Doom, and Lockjaw has a chance to pop up a lot of great cards in combination. And if you do things right, you can play Death for very cheap. Obviously, the She-Hulk Death and Wave combo. A lot of moving parts here in a very solid deck. So there you go, guys. These are all the decks that I would currently play if you are struggling and you're trying to close the gap to Infinite. Again, off the top of my head, I think Sera Control, the Good Cards deck, and then Rocks and Hawks all perform at a very high level if you do happen to have Darkhawk. But if you have Thanos, if you have Shuri, those are going to dominate, and until someone can knock those decks out, they're going to continue to reign the top of the ladder. Let me know if you guys enjoyed today's video, and good luck out there climbing. If you did and you're looking for more content, we have a lot covering the patch this week. Go ahead and subscribe down below, and until the next one, happy snapping.